Good morning, everyone. I hope you're all keeping well, and thank you very much for joining us. We are presenting this webinar from home, so please excuse any unwanted background noise or any delay in the slides. Following the webinar, you will receive an email with a copy of the PowerPoint, the recording of this webinar, and a certificate of attendance after the webinar. You can access all the recordings to all previous webinars and register for upcoming webinars on our Skills for Wales website. You will receive an email with a link to a survey, which will also drop in the chat box. We will be very grateful if you could take the time to fill in this survey, as your feedback is very valuable to us. So let's move on and have a look at today's agenda. So what we're going to be discussing this morning, well, we'll briefly mention the transformation of these qualifications. We'll look at the content of the Level 3 qualification, structure of units, summary of assessment. We'll mention the employer confirmation guide. We'll show you the learning resources available, discuss next steps, and then there'll be an opportunity to ask us any questions. Please type in any questions that you may have in the questions tab on the right-hand side of your screen during the presentation. We will try to answer those ongoing, but we'll probably take the majority at the end. So let's do the introductions. Today on your webinar is myself, David Pye, Lead Technical Advisor and Technical Advisor for Building Services Engineering. Jason Howe, Technical Advisor for Construction. Ian Roberts, Technical Advisor for Construction. And sadly not with us today or unavailable is Anne Harrod Lloyd-Bennion, who's also inputted a lot of the information on these slides. So why the transformation? In February 2018, Qualifications Wales published a Building the Future report, which was a sector review of the qualifications and the qualification system in construction and the built environment in Wales. Some of the Qualification Wales outlined findings were that inconsistent assessment practice, some areas of learning not effectively assessed, learners needed to deal with a range of tasks and to be able to problem solve. The qualifications weren't meeting skills needs of Wales. There was a need to reduce the complexity of the system. There was also a need to improve coherence with clear pathways. Progression routes needed to be clear throughout the framework and onto higher education. So next slide, please. On this slide, it shows the type of questions that you may have. I won't go through this slide by line. As I mentioned earlier, you will receive a copy of this presentation, so it's a helpful slide for you to go back to if you need to. So let's have a look at the next slide. So this shows the possible learner journeys with different options for learners. So starting with the top one there, a learner may leave school and do the foundation and then move on to the apprenticeship, in which case they will do the Level 3 qualification in their trade, which is what we'll be discussing today. If they're not successful in gaining employment after the foundation, they may move on to the progression qualification. They may, if they don't feel as though the foundation is a suitable starting point, start with a broad Level 1, such as a 6219 or the 7201. They may move on to the foundation then apprenticeship or progression. They can also start the apprenticeship direct from school or go direct into an apprenticeship of their trade, in which case they wouldn't only do the Level 3 apprenticeship qualification we're discussing today, but also the core qualification. The core qualification is the same as the foundation qualification, but instead of selecting 2 trade units, learners would only do one trade unit related to their apprenticeship. Next slide, please. So, now we are on the construction for level 3 qualification content. And I'd like to pass you over to my colleague, Jason, who'll take you through the next few slides. Thank you, Jason.
Thank you, David. Yes, so good morning, everybody. My name is Jason Howe, Technical Advisor for Construction, and I'm going to take you through the content of the qualification and look at how the units are also structured. So just initially a bit of a recap and also a follow on from the previous slide David's just showcased with regards to the different qualification types and journey that a learner can take. So to the left we have the foundation, and that has the trade areas for construction and BSc, and that portfolio is managed by us at City and Guilds. And as David mentioned as well, that is also the same as the core, except learners will just do the one trade area aligned with their apprenticeship. So for example, they would do the decorative finishing and industrial painting pathway as part of the core when they're doing the level 3 apprenticeship. Below that you have the pre-foundation of the level 1, so we have the construction skills, which is the 6219 option for learners, and we have the plumbing and electrical 7201 qualification as well. So we just wanted to showcase those to you. The journey continues then onto progression, and for the purpose of this, City and Guilds offer the construction routes with our colleagues at EAL covering our BSc routes. And then finally, we have the level 3 qualifications, which are part of the apprenticeship. And for the purpose of this, we've just highlighted and showcased that we're focusing on the paint and decorating level 3 today. But the other pathways are on screen also for you. Next slide, please, Ian. Just to mention as well, everything that we cover today with regards to the qualification content and the assessments, etc., all that information can be found on the Skills for Wales website, and certainly we'd encourage you to start exploring that website for all of the key information that you may need for your qualification delivery and assessment. So on screen now we have the rules of combination. So for the level 3 we have the 6 common core units, and those are the 3 same common core units across every trade pathway. And those are units 301 to 306, and we'll have a look at those shortly. Then, as mentioned, the learners would do their trade-specific pathway. So for the purpose of this, we're looking at paint and decorating, and within paint and decorating, there are 6 units. At the end of their level 3, learners would need to be assessed, and there are 3 assessment methods, which my colleagues will cover shortly. And in order to be successfully certificated, learners will need to achieve at least a pass grade or higher in each one of those assessments to be certificated. With regards to this qualification, there are 710 guided learning hours aligned to it, and included within that is 86 hours for the assessment, again, which we'll cover. Just to bear in mind though that the GLH, should you wish to, it can be delivered either within your training provider setting or within that learner's industry setting as well. So a blended approach can be adapted for that. Next slide, please. So just to highlight the units that are available within this qualification. So first of all, we're looking at the common core units, and they're on screen accordingly with the relevant unit number 301 to 306, the title aligned to that unit, and the assigned GLH. And the GLH is in line with the learning content and the assessment criteria that's contained within each unit. So that's bespoke to each individual unit. And again, all this information is in the qualification handbook that is on the Skills for Wales website. Next, we're now going to look at the paint and decorating units contained within the pathway. So just to showcase, we've got the common core units at the top, total in a GLH of 180, followed by then the individual trade units contained within this level 3 qualification. So you have the unit number, the qualification, the unit title, and then you have the aligned GLH. And again, the GLH is in line with the content that is within that unit, including the learning content and the assessment criteria. In addition to that, we have the GLH and the hours that's assigned to the assessment, given a grand total of 710 hours. Next slide, please. So now we're just going to have a little look at the unit structure and how they appear in the qualification handbook. So on the first slide, we just wanted to highlight, next slide, please, just what the different parts of the units and how they're structured and what they mean. So we have the learning outcomes, which are basically chunks of learning, of knowledge or practical skills that the learners will be able to understand or be able to do following all of their teaching and learning sessions. Followed by the assessment criteria. So this breaks down the learning outcomes into a bit more detail, and this is what is assessed in connection with the learning outcome. Followed by that, you have the range, and this basically takes the assessment criteria and puts it into a bit more detail, giving more breadth of coverage of what's required. And this is a pretty standardized format. So if you're familiar with City and Guilds qualifications, you know this won't be this will be fairly standardized and should be familiar to you. All elements of the range, it is advised, must be covered as part of the delivery of the unit to ensure that all learners have got the relevant understanding of knowledge and skills as well in order for them to progress on to assessment. Next slide, please. So how does a unit look within the qualification handbook? So for the purpose of this, we're just looking at one of the common core units, which is unit 301. So we have the unit number and title, the assigned GLH, and then we have a little bit of a brief description of what that unit's about. And tutors can, cut and paste these out. These can be issued to learners to give them a bit of an introduction as to what they're going to be undertaking as part of that unit, or they may be used for curriculum planning or whatever you may need. Followed by that, you then move into the learning outcomes. And again, those are listed numerically. So for the purpose of this, we just put learning outcome 2, which is understand safe working practices. As we move on through the qualification handbook, you have other learning outcomes. And for this one, again, you've got the learning outcome and the number and the title at the top, followed by the criteria or assessment criteria, as we mentioned, and then we have the range. And the range, again, just gives more of a breadth of what needs to be covered as part of the criteria. And that's a fairly standardized approach that we have at City and Guilds. What is new and is in addition to the range of criteria and learning outcome is the delivery outcome. And this, again, just gives more depth of content of what needs to be delivered in line with the criteria, the range and the learning outcome. So it's specific to those. And hopefully this is a more supportive tool now for tutors and teachers that are looking to deliver this content. So when they're planning their lessons and looking at how many sessions may need to be delivered or the type of content or what needs to be covered, hopefully this gives sufficient information to allow tutors to do that. Next slide, please. Moving on to one of the trade units now. So for the purpose of this, we're looking at unit 221, and you have the unit number and title, the aligned GLH, and the brief description. So again, the format is very standardized between different types of unit, no matter whether it's a core or a trade unit. And then we have the learning outcomes, and we move into those accordingly. Next slide, please. As a final addition now, just to finish showcasing what the qualification handbook looks like. Again, you have the learning outcome, number and title. Then you're followed by the criteria and the range, as we've seen previously. And then you have the delivery outcome. The delivery outcome for this purpose, though, is laid out slightly different. So this is in a bullet point format, where previously it was in a sentence, more formal format. And again, that is aligned and bespoke to the content that's contained within the criteria. Again, aligning itself with what is hopefully more appealing and suitable for tutors when they are planning and delivering this qualification content. So hopefully that's been helpful for you today. I am now going to pass you over to my colleague Ian Roberts, who's going to take you through the summary of assessment. Thank you.
Thank you, Jason, and welcome, ladies and gentlemen. I'm going to commence by going through the summary of assessments. And you'll see that some of these slides is very similar to what we've done previously, because the method of assessment or the assessment methodology is very similar as we work through it moving forward. So, painting and decorating, level 3 qualification is assessed using 3 methods of assessments. Like before, we've seen is the on-screen assessment. Multiple choice questions, externally set and externally marked, and they have an overall weighting of 20%. You will see, however, that this will include test 1 and test 2, which I will come to later on in these slides. Then we've got the practical project, and this covers the trade area that they are working towards. This is carried out within industry, and it will be set in agreement with the employer and assessed by the assessor employed by the training provider. This will then be externally quality assured, and there's an overall weighting of 60%. And the third method of assessment is the professional discussion. And this is now new to a lot of people. Like we've done in the foundation and the progression, it's actually called a guided discussion, which is a gentle build up to this final assessment, which is the professional discussion. This is one externally set and externally marked, and this will be carried out by a trade-specific member of the awarding organisation, and there's an overall weighting of 20%. We will, however, be going through each method of assessment in the up and coming slides. But before I move on, I'd just like to reinforce that we have an assessment pack detailing the requirements of the assessments that can be downloaded from the Skills for Wales website. So please, when you have the opportunity, please look at this accordingly. Within this slide, I'm going to now go through in more depth each method of assessment. As we've said, the on-screen assessment contains two tests, Test 1 and Test 2, and can be taken at any stage in the assessment process. Although this is on demand and completed at any time, although it is advisable to complete prior to the professional discussion. The Test 1 contains 45 questions, and the learner will have 70 minutes to complete. This may have been completed, however, during their second year, or a learner who may have completed their progression qualification will have achieved as this is the same test, provided, of course, they've carried out the progression qualification they have included within that section, the painting and decorating. If they've included an additional trade area, then they would have to do Test 1, which covers this specific trade area. Test 2 is completed in the final year and has 25 questions and has a timing of 35 minutes. The practical project, as we are aware of and previously seen in the foundation and progression, is made up of 3 elements. The elements are very similar to what we have, like I've said, in the foundation and the progression. And this includes planning, performing, and evaluating, which are the 3 main elements. The project is carried out in the realistic working environment. They can select from a number of tasks that are outlined within the assessment pack, and however, cannot exceed any more than 4 of the work-based activities. And again, the assessor employed by the training provider will carry out assessment visits, which will just be purely on focusing on the project, which will include a minimum of 3 visits. The professional discussion, as I've mentioned, will be carried out by a member of the awarding organisation and will be occupationally competent. This will be carried out in a one-time sitting and can be either virtual or face-to-face. The professional discussion will last no more than 45 minutes and will be graded pass through to distinction. During this, the learner will need to demonstrate their knowledge, understanding and performance from the occupational standards relevant to their trade. They will also be required to reflect on the practical project they have completed within their professional discussion. The professional discussion can only take place once the learner has completed their project and the employer confirmation guide, which we'll go through very shortly. The online test will contain engaging multiple choice question types and styles, and are all online with results received immediately after the assessment. Test 1 may have been achieved previously if the learner successfully completed their progression qualification within the same trade. And as I've mentioned previously, if they have not taken the progression within the same trade area, then they will have to sit and achieve both tests. On the right of the slide, on the assessment information for the sample test 2, 25 questions, and they require a minimum of 17 correct responses to retain a pass 1. This, however, is only for the sample test. So when the actual test is taken, it may take more than a few days for the final results to come through, because we will need an exact certain number of cohort of learners to achieve this, to attain what will be the benchmark for a pass and the benchmark for the merits and the distinctions. So like we've got at the moment for the foundation and the progression, it's taking up to 20 days, and it will depend on the number of cohort of learners. Once that number of cohort of learners have gone through and the benchmarks have been set, then the results will come through immediately. We are now going to cover in greater detail the practical project. A learner for this trade area will have 12 hours to complete their planning, and this may include up to the 4 tasks or projects. They then have 50 hours to complete the performing and 12 hours to complete the evaluation of the tasks they have included within their project. As previous further information can be located on the website within the practical project section of the assessment pack. So when you go into the Skills for Wales website, you'll see under its own trade heading, the Painting and Decorating Level 3, we can gain access to the relevant documentations. With regards to the professional discussion, here you can see a brief overview of the content and timings. The units we have identified, along with the learner reflection on the practical project, this should help you in supporting the learner in being prepared to meet the external assessor. Project documentation that the learner has completed can be available during their professional discussion to help the learner make reference to accordingly. And as you can see, the discussion will have to be recorded and captured in a secure GDPR compliant way. The discussion has to take place in one timed sitting, and the timing is 40 minutes allocated, which is the maximum time, with an additional 5 minutes can be added to allow the learner to complete the final question. As per the guided discussion in the foundation and progression, there is no minimum time limit that the learner has to sit to carry out this assessment. And before we move on, I'd just like to reinforce that the professional discussion will be conducted by a competent external assessor from the awarding organisation. So it'll be something that an individual person, I should say, that the learner will never have met until the day that it is actually carried out. So it's all about making sure the learner is prepared for that particular assessment process. We are all aware by now that there is no NVQ within the Level 3 qualification. Learners, however, still have to gain the skills and knowledge within industry to carry out and fulfill their role within the construction industry. Within this slide, we can make reference to the employer confirmation and how this will help and support the learner in meeting the qualification requirements and attaining their CSCS card. The guide which I will go through provides guidance to employers and training providers on how the occupational competency statements set by industry have been met. The document, when completed, will provide employers, federations and industry the confidence that the learner has provided evidence of meeting the occupational competency statements. And the overall qualification will be graded pass, merit to distinction to help differentiate the achievement between learners. provisional grades for the practical project will undergo internal and external quality assurance. With regards to the professional discussion, the external assessor will confirm the grade immediately, and the overall final grade will be issued by City and Guilds. Learners can resit assessments or make a resubmission when a learner fails to achieve a pass grade in any of the assessments. Guidance on the resits, etc. can be found in the assessment pack, but we're now just going to provide a brief overview of what we've just mentioned. So here, I'd like to provide that brief overview on the resit and resubmissions. With regards to the on-screen assessment, although there are no limits to the number of times a learner can take, you should provide additional learning prior to a retake. And when a retake is taken, the learner can still achieve the full marks and grades available. But there will be an additional cost, and it has to be booked through Walled Garden. So please bear this in mind. The practical project. Here you can see the opportunities, and rather than having to resit the entire project, they can retake the criteria that they failed. For example, regarding the planning, if they do not meet the threshold pass, then they can resubmit the criteria that they failed and will be reassessed within the resubmission. Regarding the professional discussion, when a learner fails to successfully achieve, then they are permitted to resit, but they must resit the all professional discussion, which again, there will be an additional cost of, and it will have to be booked through Walled Garden. I'd now like to go through and touch on the employer confirmation guide. But before I begin, may I take this opportunity to say thank you to all stakeholders. I've no doubt we have people on this webinar today who's been involved with this, for their valuable contribution and feedback we have received, and that has helped the consortium in shaping what am I about to present. Employer confirmation is part of the learner journey and will help strengthen the relationships between employers, centres and the learner. This is only part of the learner journey, and the process will enhance the employer role in the delivery of the new apprenticeship qualifications in the construction and built environment sector. I apologise that this is all in Welsh. It's my apologies. There's been a slight error with the presentation. I'd like to carry on if I may though. As we are aware, the learner will spend a considerable amount of their time in the realistic working environment, and the purpose of the confirmation sign-off is to capture the activities and provide stakeholders, including trade bodies, confidence that the learner is occupationally proficient and has covered the full range of the relevant standards to allow the learner to progress to the final part of their assessment process, the professional discussion. Although there is no MVQ within the new apprenticeship model, a learner will still provide a range of evidence that allows the centre to check the employer confirmatory sign-off is valid. Upon successful completion of that robust assessment process and the confirmatory sign-off, a learner will be in a position to attain the relevant skills card. We are aware that the employer confirmation sign-off process is new and will raise a few concerns. We are here though, the consortium will provide centres and employers with instructions and the requirements for completing this process within the employer confirmation guide, which will be further communicated at our centre and employer events, which are currently being scheduled and once they are scheduled, they'll be located on the Skills for Wales website for you to be able to register. We will, however, during our monthly updates that we do send out to people, we will forward the links through that as well, so people have the times and dates that these will be taking place. Here we can see how working collaboratively, we can support the learner along their journey that they will require to move forward and progress to their final assessment of the robust assessment process, which is the professional discussion. As you can see, by working together, employers and centres will provide opportunities that will allow the learner to gain valuable industrial experience and complete the activities outlined within the employer confirmation guide. Whether it be 1, 2 or 3 employers, they will work with the learners throughout their apprenticeship. Hence the reasons why we have made provision on Forms A and Form B for more than one employer to work on the documents. And this is mainly in line with what we call the shared apprenticeship schemes. Work-based learning providers and centres will work with employers to guide and support to ensure the occupational competency statement log is being completed correctly. And as you can see, the pieces start to come together. And this is through working collaboratively to ensure the learner journey does run smoothly. This process is to ensure the learner is prepared for the final assessment. And as you can imagine, this hasn't been a smooth journey, as change is always and sometimes very difficult to accept. We have engaged with a considerable number of stakeholders, including micro businesses, medium to large contractors, and federations, including colleges and private training providers. Within this slide, you will see the front page contents and a section that is contained within the employer confirmation guide. Whether it be 1, 2 or 3 employers, they will work with the learner throughout their apprenticeship. That's the main reasons why I've made provision on the various forms for more than one employer to work on the documents. The employer confirmation guide will be trade specific and can be located on the Skills for Wales website under the trade specific heading, which in this case will be painting and decorating. The document will be in a writable PDF and can be completed either electronically or hard copy. The employer confirmation is the responsibility of the employer and the learner working collaboratively with the learning provider. Although not part of the qualification, this is to be completed prior to the learner moving forward to complete their final assessment, which is the professional discussion. And as you can see, the documents will be in the Welsh medium language as well as English. So that's thank you for now, and I'd now like to pass you over to David, who will take you through the next set of slides. Thank you for now.
Thank you very much, Ian. We're going to now look at some of the resources. Only a final few slides to work through. So if we can move on to the next slide, please, Ian. Our first step to access information will be the Skills for Wales website, and from there you'll see under the qualifications tab a list of sectors. Click on your sector and scroll down to the bottom tab titled Qualification Documents, and here you'll find 2 documents, the handbook and secondly the employer confirmatory sign-off. The handbook contains content along with various requirements for the qualification, so it's always the best starting point. You can find various other supporting documents on this website, which covers the qualifications from foundation through to level 3 qualifications. Please familiarise yourselves with the website and the documents. If you're struggling to find anything at all, please do let us know. I'll drop it into the questions tab whilst we're now on this webinar, and we can try and share links and direct you to the correct documents. So let's move on to the delivery planner. Many of you should be familiar with this from previous webinars and from using them to support delivery of the foundation qualification. The delivery planner is fully adaptable and equally as useful for delivering the level 3 qualifications. Please allow time to consider your delivery and timings, and if you wish to use this document, please feel free to share your thoughts and plans with us if you'd like to talk them through. We're here to support you and help you deliver these qualifications. So the more you can engage with us and discuss with us, the more we can help. So on the next slide, what you'll see is a link to Hodder Education's textbooks. So as previously promoted, we have a suite of sector books from Hodder Education. To support the new suite of qualifications, Hodder have created free mapping documents to support staff and learners in accessing the related information. Please contact Thomas Stott at Direct for more information. His email details are on the screen now. I spoke to Thomas just last week and he said he's had very, very few people contact him for this free material. So they can share the free mapping documents, also have inspection copies of textbooks. They also do all these textbooks as a tutor resource on the screen, which is adaptable, and as ebooks. There's so much support that Hodder have. We'd really encourage you to email Thomas direct, and he's a really nice guy. You can open up the dialogue with him and he'll share any information and support documents he can for free, and he may be able to work on a deal for others. I don't know, you have to ask him, but please do contact him direct to make use of all this material. Thank you, Ian. So, next steps. Let's have a look at the next steps of this journey, particularly approval. Here we can see that centre approval actually commenced in Jan 21 with the foundation and progression, and now closely followed by the level 3 qualification. Provided you haven't already gained centre approval, the following slides will help provide a broad overview of the approval journey for centres. As we are aware, these are brand new qualifications and an offline application has to be completed. If not already done so, it is available in the Become a Centre section of the Skills for Wales website and is for all qualifications for both awarding bodies. On completion, it should be forwarded to skillsforwales.quality@sittinggirls.com. This section will also include an FAQ document to support you with that. So next slide, please, Ian. Centres can expect a decision about approval within 30 working days of completing the application. Please note, separate approvals must be submitted for sub-centres. In terms of your IQA documents, centres do not need to reinvent new documentation for all these qualifications. A lot of your planners and IQA documents will be suitable for this new suite of qualifications. They maybe just need updating or adapting to meet the new assessment methods. So as we move on to the next slide, we can see many of the future training events we are holding. Now we're quite a way through these at this stage now, and we're waiting for some more to be confirmed. These are brand new qualifications, so we recommend you take time to register onto all of the events that you're available to. If these are online, we recommend that you register anyway, even if you don't believe you can make it live, because the system will send you an automatic link to the recording and the follow-up information. So please make a note of any interested upcoming CPD. We are working currently on a new suite of support and engagement for all centres in the next 12-18 months. So this will be updated shortly once we have some confirmation. Thank you, Ian. So that's pretty much it for all the delivery on the webinar. We will pause for a couple of moments. We'll have a look to see if there's any questions coming in. It doesn't have to be a direct question, so it may be some thoughts about the qualifications, maybe thoughts on future support, maybe feedback on these webinars. What would you like to see? What do you need? What do you need help with? What are your thoughts, questions and queries, support material? Just anything at all, really. We want you to know that our job role here is just to support you delivering this. That's it. So anything we can do to help, please let us know, and we'll do everything we can to support you. So if you don't think of a question today and you think of one later, what we have is another email. So whilst I'm waiting for you to think of any questions now, we'll just cover the last two slides. This next one is just really a request for you to complete the survey if you could. I have actually dropped it in the chat now, so there's a direct link to the survey in the chat. It's so important to get these survey results. We want to know if we're doing what supports you, what do you like about these, what's helpful, where are your future pain points. You know, the more information we can gather from the providers, the better suited our support can be in future. So please do take a few moments just to complete that short survey. There will be more. We'll be carrying out surveys throughout the delivery of this because we want to keep in touch with you and make sure that we're reacting to your needs. So please do take the time to respond to those. The final slide then will show you an email address. So if you can't think of a question today, or if you go away and tomorrow you think, oh, crikey, I wish I've asked that, or I've got some feedback here, or there's something I'm happy with or not happy with, please do contact skillsforwales.customer@sittingills.com. It's a really helpful email address. It will be logged officially there, so if you want your thoughts and feelings logged, it will be logged officially and shared with the most appropriate person to answer that. But please do make a note of that email address and stay in touch with us, really. So there's been no questions, so what I propose we do, we'll just give you a final few seconds to ask any questions. We won't keep you here any longer than we need to. If we've answered everything, if that's everything you needed, then that's fine. We won't linger it on if we don't have to, but equally we want to make sure we give you every opportunity to ask your questions. So just a final shout out really for any questions or queries, please type them in. If not, what I'll do is I'll say a big thank you to our presenters today. So namely Justin Howe, thank you very much, Jason, sorry, apologies. Jason Howe, thank you very much, Jason. And Ian Roberts, and Ian often puts together these presentations, all the content and plans and arranges them. So an extra thank you to Ian. So I can't see any further questions, gentlemen. Is there anything you'd like to say until just before we close?
Just a reminder, David, of the up and coming events that we might be having regarding the employer confirmation guide and supporting centres getting prepared for level 3s in September, which will be taking place end of June, beginning of July. So there'll be employer events regarding the employer confirmation guide, and then we'll be holding short webinars, 4 in total, on the getting prepared to deliver the level 3. That's it really, David, on my behalf. Thank you.
That's brilliant, Ian. Thank you very much. Jason, do you have anything to add?
Nothing from me, just to thank all of the attendees and yourself and my colleague Ian for presenting today. Yeah, just thank everyone for attending.
That's excellent. Well, thanks very much. And yeah, it's a very good point, Ian. We've got so much more of these sessions to support coming up. Please keep an eye out on the Skills for Wales website. Register for those that you can and share them with friends and colleagues from your own centre and other centres. Let's try and get as many along to these as we can, and we can all share best practice and support each other. Well, have a great rest of today. Thanks for your attendance, and we look forward to seeing you all again soon. Thank you. Goodbye.